Americans overwhelmingly oppose Judge Kaczmarek's ruling. It's 70 to 27% opposing the idea of banning the abortion pill. So that's pretty clear. And even if you go across religious groups, we have a chart that I'm going to put up if you can see it. You can go all the way down. White evangelical Protestants, and essentially the only groups who are largely for banning abortion are white evangelical Protestants, Mormons, Latter-day Saints, and people who are Jehovah's Witnesses. But altogether, we're talking about under 15% of the population is for banning abortion. So why should this one judge be able to override the desires of 70% of Americans?
Well, I'd have to look at the wording of that specific poll, but I do know that there is a spectrum of, from 0 to 9 months, how people feel about abortion. And I do know that there is a majority of the country that does want some restrictions on abortion.
I agree with that.
So I think we can both agree on that point.
Yes.
So, and as far as this ruling is concerned, I think if we were to actually explain, and again, it's all about wording when you explain these polls. Sure. But from my perspective, and, I just spoke with my friends at ADF who are bringing this lawsuit, what are the main reasons why this is happening? And first of all, just to take a step back, this drug, the approval was challenged almost immediately out of the gate, but the FDA refused to respond. And under their own regulations, they're supposed to respond within 180 days. They blew past it. They refused to do that. And so you had almost, decades of the FDA refusing to respond. And it's only more recently when you have the promulgation and just the much more common occurrence where that's why this litigation was brought. So just to put that context, that the FDA has gone rogue and is refusing to follow its own guidelines. Also, the notion that this drug is safe is there's so much data to say that it's not safe and that the FDA did not follow its own rules. So the FDA, when it went through this process, it categorized pregnancy as an illness similar to HIV/AIDS, and that the only sort of therapeutic benefit is that this child is killed. That's not a therapeutic benefit to anyone. And pregnancy is not an illness. It's a natural process. So you have the FDA that's rejecting its own sort of normal process. And then what are the results of it? You have so many studies. So you have one, Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. They found that of more than 40,000 abortions in Finland, they found that 1 in 5 women had some sort of medical complication from this drug. There was another study in a peer-reviewed study by the Health Services Research and Managerial Epidemiology Journal found there was a 4 times more likelihood of some sort of medical complication from the chemical abortion as opposed to a surgical abortion. So there are lots of safety questions about this, and the FDA did not follow its own rules. And I think also what's also disconcerting is to hear, a Congresswoman, AOC, and there's also Senator Ron Wyden saying they want to undermine the rule of law and to say ignore this ruling. I think that's very, very scary.
So let me go through each of those things. Let's start with the fact that the FDA, they're scientists. It is their job. This judge, you would agree with me, is not a scientist. You would agree?
Sure.
Judge Kaczmarek. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's not a scientist. The science behind it, the FDA, I'm sure, has people who come to them with objections to drugs that they are approving. And they may dismiss them because they don't have the science with them. In the case of mifepristone, this is the actual data and the science. There have been 5 deaths per 1 million users since its approval in 2000. It's been legal for 23 years. There have been 5 deaths per 1 million users. That is a death rate of 0.0005%. Let me give you a comparison. Viagra, 49 deaths per 1 million users, which is 10 times higher than mifepristone. There's no lawsuit seeking to take Viagra off the market. Penicillin, which is very obviously crucial, right, in treating disease. 20 deaths per 1 million users, which is 4 times higher than mifepristone. So this is a drug that doctors rely upon, not just for abortions, but also for miscarriages. And they are the scientists who are in charge of caring for patients. And the science says that this is safer than Viagra and penicillin.
But I think it's important to note that you mentioned deaths, and unfortunately, the FDA changed its own methodology
but
for
you
tracking.
don't dispute those numbers.
I haven't looked at those specific numbers. I mean, I'm trusting you on the death numbers. I'd have to look at it separately to see if I found something different. But I just want to point out that the FDA changed its own guidelines as far as reporting complications. It used to actually have to report them, and as I understand it now, based on what the ADF has reported, they don't even have to report complications. And so that's what's also problematic, is that it minimizes, in some ways, hides the complications of it and the risk to the women.
Here's my question, because the science is very clear, right? The data is clear that this is safer than Viagra and penicillin. But by taking this drug and doing what they're doing, attempting to delete the FDA's approval of it, which has stood for 23 years. Here's what's happening in some states. In Iowa, the state of Iowa, which has an abortion ban on the books, has said that women who are raped will no longer be able to get this drug cocktail. They won't be able to do it. You've already had, and let's just be clear, the anti-abortion, the pro-birth, the forced birth movement, as I call them, they don't want exceptions. They are for women being punished. You've had a 10-year-old rape victim forced to travel from Ohio to Indiana for an abortion. You have a law in Idaho that essentially makes it illegal for anyone to help a woman, to be an Uber driver for a woman. You have the bounty law in Texas. What's the end game here? Isn't the end game of this law? Because it's not about making the FDA change its rules. It's about making both abortion and then eventually contraceptive illegal, right?
Well, I think this particular case is about making the FDA follow its own procedure. And part of why we see, I think, the rise in concern is that you have a 500% increase in the number of ER visits because of the increase in the promulgation.
Where's your facts to back that up?
That was something that was cited in the ADF filing of the case.
Well, see, I read through the case, yes, and there was a lot of ideological language there that was sort of trying to present sort of science, and this judge is not a scientist. But what I got from reading that ruling is that this judge would like abortion to be illegal. And he cites the Comstock Act repeatedly. And what the Comstock Act did was make it illegal to even discuss pregnancy or abortion, but also contraception. So is the end game, and this is, I think, really important for people to understand from your ideological point of view, is the end game to make both abortion nationally illegal and make contraception nationally illegal?
Well, I can't, and I appreciate you having me on and having a dialogue. I think we need to have more sort of these dialogues in this country for sure, and lower the temperature a little bit. But I mean, I think for abortion, I can't speak for this judge. I don't know. He's reading the law as it stands. Mm-hmm. He's reading the FDA's policies, which they themselves have ignored and denied. I am a pro-life activist. I do believe personally that. And again, this is a science thing. Over 90% of scientists agree that immediately at conception there is a human life. There is the genus and the species. No,
I don't think over 90% of scientists believe that. And by the way,
it's a human life.
Well, historically, even in the colonial era, in the earliest eras of this country, until the quickening, until a woman could feel a child inside of her, most even religious people, most people in the colonial era, abortion was not illegal until the quickening. And so that is what the Roe standard was. But my question, I think it's really important for people to understand where people who are on your ideological side are coming from. Yeah. Do you want abortion to be illegal in the entire country? Because that is going against the views of the vast majority. I would say more than 70 to 80% of Americans don't want that. Do you want that?
Well, scientifically, immediately conception, all of the DNA is separate. It's two separate bodies. There's no DNA from the mother that is in the child.
But do you want abortion to be illegal?
I believe in human rights. To me, abortion is as evil as slavery. It truly is. And when you look at the founding of Planned Parenthood and who Margaret Sanger was, you look at her research. She was a woman who believed in eugenics. She was a woman who believed in the purification of the race. And she didn't want certain women to reproduce. And I find that legacy to be deeply problematic. Right, and from just a scientific standpoint.
Right, but the vast majority of women are not eugenicists. Most people probably don't even know who Margaret Sanger is. Most women just want control of their own body. So my last question to you, do you think that contraception should be illegal?
No, and I was very concerned by the piece that you mentioned, where some people are trying to block access to birth control. And I think that I hope this can be a bipartisan area where vasectomies, I mean, why aren't we all pushing for that in terms of healthcare coverage for men to get vasectomies and encourage them? And they are thankfully reversible in the vast majority of cases. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm Protestant. I know that some Catholics disagree with me on the birth control front, but I think that that's an area, if we can focus on termination, then we can have a lot fewer conversations about prevention than instead of termination.
Okay, well, Carrie Sheffield, thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming down and being willing to not everyone's willing to do it, so I appreciate you coming and having the dialogue. All right, thank you very much. I now want to bring in Dr. Jennifer Villavicencio from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Thank you for being here. And first, let me make sure I pronounced your name correctly.
That is correct. Villavicencio.
Villavicencio. Okay. So let me, thank you, of course. I want to go back and just ask if there's anything that you heard in that conversation that you think was not correct.
Unfortunately, the majority of what your previous guest said was in some way misinformation. I'm having a hard time coming into this segment after hearing that because there are so many things that I'd like to correct the record on. I think the first and the most important is that there was little, if any, conversation whatsoever about the individuals, the women, the people, and the families that this decision is going to impact. Those are the people that I have spent most of my life training to be an expert, to be a physician scientist, to take care of. My job is to understand the science, is to understand the studies that are being kind of quoted and thrown out there, that are being cited in these really biased opinions. And what I can tell you is that they were cherry picked. So one of the studies that was mentioned by your previous guest was one from Finland, not even in this country. Another one was from the 1990s and completely ignored the incredible amount of almost, 23 years of data that we have to show that mifepristone is extraordinarily safe, that the complication rates in ER visits are akin to things like, life-saving colonoscopy screening, for example. Very, very similar. Additionally, this idea that scientists agree on when life begins, that's really a philosophical question, not so much a scientific question. And so to suggest that that is scientifically sound or founded is untrue and really disingenuous. And I would also offer that this idea that mifepristone is dangerous is completely incorrect.